All right, so this is Ben and Atlee here. We're here with Alex Dube, 2010 graduate. We're here to ask you some questions about your current occupation and your time at YHS.
Great. Happy to be here.
Atlee, if you want to.
Okay. So, what did you do at YHS? Did you do sports, clubs, anything like that?
Yeah, I was probably best known for being the softball pitcher. Yeah, it's kind of my whole life. I played year round, which was pretty rare. They generally tell you not to specialize, but I really enjoyed pitching, so would practice pitching pretty much every day. And then also I was on the newspaper staff. I was co-editor in chief with my friend Rhea for our junior and senior year. And then I was on, I don't think it exists anymore, but Tidal Waves.
Yeah, I mean, it's Silver Friends now, but yeah.
Yeah, this is part of that as well.
So, overall, did you enjoy your time at YHS? Overall, thoughts,
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, it's interesting what a decade and a half of perspective will give you. And I think just having the opportunity to live in such a beautiful place and at a high school that's a half mile from the beach is pretty awesome. And then just the amount of funding that exists in this school and the extracurriculars. And yeah, I mean, I thought YHS is probably one of the best places that you can be in order to set yourself up for the future. There's a reason why there's such a high percentage of graduates that go to college out of York High School, and then such a high student athlete population. That's because they're doing something right here. We have sometimes mistake.
What was kind of the thought process because I know I've had to deal with this at the end of senior year, just trying to decide what you're going to do with the rest of your life. How did you come to that decision?
So I think, at the end of, as I was approaching the end of high school, my thought process was less about what do I want to do with the rest of my life and what do I want to do right now and how can I keep as many doors open as possible while I figure that out. For me, I actually had never considered the military in general up until junior year when my dad was doing research. He's just, as he does, very invested in the college process, and he came across the Coast Guard Academy as a D3, softball opportunity, and he was like, "Hey, let's go check it out. I'll write you a school excusal, and we can go do that." And I was like, "Dad, there's no way I'm going to the military. That is absolutely insane." But I learned more about it. It's tuition free because it's a service academy. Doesn't require congressional nomination to apply there. It was a guaranteed job afterward in a time where the job security piece was a concern. And the Coast Guard in particular, out of all the services, has a very humanitarian mission statement. It's, search and rescue, it's fisheries conservation. And so for me, I was like, well, I don't really know what I want to do right now, but helping people while I figure it out seems like a good way to spend my time. But
Did you consider anything else before the academy? Did you consider furthering your softball career?
I considered. I always knew that the most I would do with softball is play in college and then maybe coach a little on the side, which I still hope. I have 2 young kids, and as they grow up, I hope to coach and kind of get back into it.
Wasn't the main focus, right?
Yeah, it was a big outlet for me, but the end goal always kind of ended at college.
How old are your kids?
My son just turned 2 and my daughter's 3.5. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Do you plan on doing anything else other than the Coast Guard? It seems you're pretty comfortable there, but given the opportunity, would you do something else?
Interesting and timely question. This summer I'm wrapping up my 10 years of active duty time in the Coast Guard and transitioning out. And so I'll be going back to school to get my MBA from Dartmouth.
So you kind of mentioned before the benefits of the Coast Guard Academy and stuff like that. And then you kind of said that the GI Bill was something that you didn't even know about before. So has there been other things that kind of just came along the way that you didn't know were benefits before and just kind of popped up?
Oh, absolutely. There's obviously the tangible benefits that come along with military service that you kind of just figure out along the way. The fact that you get a basic allowance for housing. This is all publicly available if you were Google. What is it? officer in the Coast Guard make. Like, it's all out there. And then depending on where you live, there's basic allowance for housing, and it ebbs and flows with depending on the cost of living in the area to make sure you can afford living there while you're assigned to those locations. And that's not taxed. So in a lot of cases, over half your income won't be taxed, which is a really big deal when you look at the bottom line numbers. That's huge. So there's a lot of opportunities like that. So there's so I'd say some of like the tax benefits, and then the VA also offers the VA loan is a way that you can buy a house without having to put down any money, which is huge. So kind of things like that. But I would say in general, all of those are wonderful, but hands down, just having all the different experiences within the Coast Guard over those 10 years. Yeah, there was so much that I had no idea what I was signing up for. So I had no clue. But yeah, if it's helpful, I'll run through my career for a minute because I don't even know. It's supposed to.
Speaking of like the good parts, what were like the bad parts of the academy?
Yeah, I think the hardest part about the academy itself is that it is like a very rigorous environment, and they pretty intentionally try to stress test you in every way. So, you're waking up at 6 a.m. You have military obligations before and after class. You're required to maintain community service, hours. You have to participate in sports. And I'm sure there are other things. There are like inspections. There are all sorts of like kind of artificial stressors that are pumped into the environment to make you feel it and kind of adapt and overcome. And it makes you flexible. It makes you resilient. And it, ultimately just helps give you like a foundation for managing stress that you can go out into the workforce and handle pretty much any situation that they're at you.
So could you take a minute and tell us like what your job like entails, like what it's kind of been like over like the last 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I graduated the academy, I went to Boston where I was on a 270-foot cutter for 2 years. And when we would go out for 2-month deployments, we would either be boarding the fishermen off the coast of the Northeast, checking their safety gear and their fishing gear, or be going down through the Panama Canal and getting on board drug smuggling boats and interdicting basically typically cocaine, sometimes marijuana and heroin. Which was pretty wild.
Yeah.
And then so that was my first 2 years. And then after that, I went out to San Francisco where I ran the search and rescue center, basically coordinating all of our assets to help people in distress all over the Bay Area. And then also coordinated oil spill cleanups and did some vessel salvage, vessels that would sink kind of randomly. Happens. And then, from there, I was assigned to the White House military office from 2019 to 2022, where I basically did contingency planning for the senior executives in the White House. And I was part of the administration turnover between the Trump administration and the current Biden administration. And then in 2022, came back. Well, the Coast Guard asked me where we wanted to go next, and we had just had 2 kids, so we wanted to come back up, get close to family, and so I asked to come back to Boston, and they let me. And now I manage all of the law enforcement teams around Massachusetts that do a lot of the fisheries and recreational boater safety.
What advice would you give a YHS student who is graduating now?
Yeah, on the spot. The advice I would give to graduating students, I would recommend you don't put so much pressure on yourself to figure it out right now. You don't need all the answers, but try to give yourself as much room and flexibility to kind of change your plans and adapt with like your changing goals and priorities through life. They'll change a bunch between now and whatever your destination happens to be, but and probably like the biggest thing is try not to go into like a ton of debt right off the rip if you can help it. Yeah. And when in doubt, I would say don't count out the military. People really think there are a lot of stereotypes that aren't true, and there are a lot of misconceptions about it. But I would definitely recommend that anyone who is unclear or uncertain about the direction they want to go, it's a really great starting point. Even if you just enlist for a couple of years or, do a minimum service obligation, the tangible and intangible benefits are can't be understated or can't be overstated. Shoot.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Enjoyed the time, enjoyed the advice. Probably.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
We're good.